Hello, and welcome to Say Yes to Holiness podcast. I'm Christina Simmons, your host, and today I have a most enjoyable guest. I've already been laughing and having fun before we even jumped on here. But Dr. Ray Guarendi, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for coming on to be able to talk about your latest book. But I think we're probably going to talk about a few other things in the process too. So welcome.
Christina, you're doing me the favor.
Oh, not at all, not at all. So, for those of you who don't know you, and there could be people out there who have not heard of you,
Probably about
it-
7 billion.
that- just a few people.
Yeah,
But go ahead and, if you would, just kind of introduce yourself, tell a little bit about yourself, like where you are right now.
I'm a psychologist. I have been shrinking for over 40 years. I used to be like 6'9".
Mm,
That's what I do for a living. Although in the last 20, 30 years, I've slipped over into the media side, radio, television, and public speaking and writing some books. I learned the secret about
mm,
writing a lot of books.
mm-hmm.
You can't worry about them being very good.
Yeah. Yep. I have discovered that with all of my own writing. And a lot of people are like, oh, it's so great. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm glad that you got something out of it, but I
We're never
wouldn't.
satisfied with our own work. It's like watching yourself on television. Ooh, I didn't know I
Yes.
looked like that.
Yep. No, exactly. Or listening to yourself on a podcast. So I appreciate that. But even though you've been a psychologist and then you got into media, what prompted that shift and that move for you to step out from kind of the psychology work that you were doing into media? Why did you do that?
I used to entertain in nightclubs
Mm.
and I had a natural bent for the crowd. So one day I was sitting in my desk at a mental health center in a small little county where I worked, poked their head into my door and they said, "Hey, do you want to go talk to a group of parents?" I guess. I suppose I could. Oh, I got bit by the bug there, Christina. That was it. Once I got in front of the audience, it was like, okay, I'm back in my bailiwick.
Mm. But yet you have written like more than 20 books. And I can tell you from, my own writing that it's hard work. And to stand up in front of people and, as you were saying, to entertain and to be able to share is a whole different type of work than writing. So, why did you think it was important to do the writing as well as the speaking?
I wrote my first book almost 40 years ago. And back then, everybody didn't write books. And
Hmm.
so that was for me a big deal. I was like, whoa, I got it published. And then
Yeah.
everybody thinks you're smart because you wrote it down. All
Hmm.
right. So then I started getting calls for talks.
Hmm.
And locally mostly, and then one thing led to another, and I started doing TV shows. First locally,
Hmm.
then Oprah and Jenny Jones and CBS This Morning. I did all those secular shows. And
Hmm.
I realized that that really wasn't for me. There
Right.
was there was probably, I don't want to say compromise involved, but at the same time, it was like, okay, yeah, okay, so I traveled there for 9 minute segment. Big deal. How
Hmm.
much can you say in 9 minutes? And I
Right.
realized that you brought up a great point. Writing is hard. And it's the hardest thing I do. It's much for me, it's much harder than speaking. But there's a saying that if something was easy to read, it was hard to write.
Hmm.
And I find that I have to edit something 22 times before I'm satisfied with it. And I've done so much public speaking. People say, "Will you ever get nervous anymore?" Yes, I do. I play a lot of softball and I get nervous when I'm up to bat in the seventh inning with the score tied. That's pretty much when I get nervous. And been in front of so many crowds, no, no, that's long gone.
Yeah. It's interesting that you're bringing that up because for me, the last place in the world that I want to be is standing up in front of people. That was not where I wanted to be, but yet the Lord kept putting me in front of people in order to speak and to share, about the faith and it was something of where eventually I was like, okay, Lord, if this is what you want me to do, at least help me get a little bit better at it. But then it all came from the writing because one of the greatest things, and probably you have have discovered this, is that in order to not make things complicated, which we humans love to do, you need to be explained, so to explain like a teaching of the faith, if you can't explain it to a kindergartner, then you don't know it well enough. And that has been my great challenge, is to try and take the things that I know and be able to explain them to a kindergartner. But they're complex ideas, or at least a lot of people would think they are, but they're not. They're as simple as anything. Jesus proves it in his parables, doesn't he?
Taking the thoughts in your head down onto a piece of paper takes a lot of condensation.
Mm.
You've got to say it simpler. You've got to say it easy to read. And that translates when you have to go on this podcast or you go speak to people, you already got those thoughts in your head. So they
Mhm.
already come out because you've reworked them a bunch of times on that page.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I'm jealous of the fact that you said you only have to edit 22 times. But, but that's probably because you have a few more years on me in the sense of the writing process. Because
I
I've
got a
been,
few more years on you anyway.
you're very kind. So anyway, so your last book that you wrote, How to Get Along with Almost Everybody. What prompted you to write specifically about that topic?
One of the most common questions, Christina, that I now get as a shrink. Would you please tell me how to make somebody else be different? That's so common now. And I kept thinking, wait here now. Okay, maybe I can give you some ideas on how to make them a little easier to get along with, but I can give you a lot more ideas on how to make you a little easier to get along with. And
Yeah,
that's the difference. The book has basically two themes. Okay, there are people close to you that are difficult. And that's really what most of us struggle with. It isn't the lady down the street, six doors down, that you go by her house and you honk the horn and she doesn't wave and she's a curmudgeon. You don't have to get along with her. So what? You don't see her. It's
mhm,
just that mother-in-law or that brother or that cousin or that coworker or that boss or that
mhm.
priest. So these are people in the central core of your life. And you're forced to get along with them. You can't write them off, which is
Right.
unfortunately what's been happening a lot. But you
Yeah.
can't do that and be a Christian unless you're in danger. If this is your mother and she's obnoxious and she's opinionated and she's snarky, you can't go, well, I'm just happier when she's not around. So I've just decided that I'm going to set some boundaries because my mother's toxic. And
Mhm.
the therapist told me to do that. You can't do that. That's your mom. You're a
Right.
Christian. So you got to
Mhm.
figure out one of two ways. One, you figure out how to make her a more pleasant person, which is tough,
Mhm.
or you get yourself to the point where she doesn't get to you
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
she's been.
Yeah. And I think, you right there, you encapsulated one of the biggest challenges I think we have right now in our society. And I'm not, excluding myself from this at all, because I got the same issue, which is the desire to not do the hard work that's necessary to be in relationship with others. We'd rather just, and then we want someone to give us an excuse, like our psychologist, who
Yes,
says my mom is toxic, therefore I don't have to do the hard work of how do I get along with this woman.
I can't give the people around me food. They don't need it. The people around me don't need shelter. They don't need money, really. The one thing I can give them is my personality in Christ.
Mm,
Now, if that's what I'm going to give them, then I got to look at myself hard. I got to say, okay, she bugs me because she says snarky things. Well, how many times has she said snarky things? 474. Okay. Does it bother you now at 474 as much as it did at 26? Yes. Why? The accumulation. No, no, no.
mm,
It should be less because what do you expect? This is what she acts like. So you
mhm.
are still allowing this to bother you after 9 years.
Yeah.
The problem is not her, the problem is me.
Mm,
I want her to act a certain way. She's not. So instead of me saying, okay, I know what she's been like. I know what she's like. I know what she'll probably stay like. And I can let that not have the impact on me. No, instead I go, that's it. I can't take any more of this. I've had enough of her. So we do the kinds of things. And here's the other problem, Christina. People are looking at us like, oh, you're supposed to be a Christian. You
Mhm.
don't talk to your mother or your sister. Do you go to daily mass? Yes, I go to daily mass and I go to communion every day. Oh, okay. So but you're not talking to you. Well, she's just difficult. Well, okay, so she's difficult. What's the point here? Well, I shouldn't have to put up with that. What do you mean you shouldn't have to put up with that? Our Lord never committed a sin. Our Lord never deliberately offended anybody, and they killed him. So, oh, do I think I'm better? Oh, well, gosh, I shouldn't be offended. Those people shouldn't say those things. Why, they shouldn't act that way around me. I don't deserve that, Christina. I don't do
Mhm.
that to them.
Mhm. Oh yeah. No, there's all sorts of delusions that we give ourselves for justifying what we do or don't. And I think, your book does a beautiful job of giving us some practical things that we can do in order to be able to, as you said, not be offended, to not get, irritated by the snarky comment. And, what was it that, oh shoot, I just forgot. I'm sorry. But you gave a great example of a habit that you could, begin in order to not be offended anymore. And oh,
Yes, well, here's one.
okay.
Lawyers will tell you that anybody can sue anybody for any reason.
Mhm,
And it doesn't mean the suit has merit. There's a social parallel to that. Anybody can say anything about you at any time for any reason. Now,
mhm,
if you understand that, if you know that, then you will not demand that they talk a certain way or act a certain way. We 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 expect, and that's huge. They say that the difference between what you expect and what reality is frustration. The bigger the gap. Well, I don't expect my mother-in-law to give her opinions on my parenting all the time. Well, yeah, but she does. So that's reality. So drop the gap here. You're not going to change your mother-in-law. You drop your own expectation. Expect that she's going to make her cracks about your parenting. That's coming. All right. Now
mhm,
you can either challenge her. Here's an objection I got, Christina, a lot. People will say, well, then what you're saying is just be a doormat. Just
mm,
let people say whatever they want, however they want it, to be offensive, to be nasty. I say, no, no, no. Here's the difference. You're a doormat when people get to you. When they don't get to you with whatever they say or their snarky remarks because you've tried to straighten it out and you got nowhere,
mhm,
then you're not a doormat. As a matter of fact, you're actually a little more sturdy emotionally because people don't get to you like that. There's a chapter called Unoffendable.
mhm,
I love the word. It's a neologism, it's a made-up word. But I love the word because we Christians should be the least easily offended of people.
mhm,
She shouldn't have said that. Well, yeah, probably not, but she did. Well, I don't deserve that. Well, you may not deserve it, but she said it. When we get offended, we are demanding that other people talk and act a certain way. That's how we get
mhm.
offended.
Yep.
They shouldn't do that. Well, they did.
Mhm.
Well, they shouldn't. Well, okay, upset yourself then.
Mm. I remember a very wise former pastor, and someone came out after mass, and they were offended by what he had said during the homily, and they
Hmm.
wanted him to apologize. And he said, "I'm sorry, but I will not apologize because I
I'm
did not
sorry, but I will
mean to
not
offend you.
apologize.
If I meant to offend you, you would have known it."
I find that interesting the way he introduced it. I'm sorry, but I will not apologize.
Yeah. No, this absolute beautiful play on words, but I always remember that because it is something of if I intend or do not intend is huge when it comes to our relationships, but our perception or misperception of people's intentions are legion,
Here's a
and I use that
practicality.
word
Here's a
intentionally.
practicality. Yes. Here's a practical. I'm a psychologist and I sit and I listen to people and I try to fathom their motives. And about the fourth or fifth session, they'll say something, they'll tell me something that completely upends my understanding of their motives. Completely. Now, it took me 5 hours to get to that point. Most of us, when we interact with people, we judge motives within about the first 20 seconds.
Mm,
And if you recognize that when you judge somebody's motive, you can see behavior and you can hear words. You can't look inside their head. So when
mm,
you judge their motive, which is the number one reason people get offended, if you recognize you could be wrong,
mm.
he didn't do that to deliberately offend you. He did it because he was thoughtless, or he did it because he wasn't even thinking about how this behavior might be interpreted. That's why he did it. He didn't do it to tell you, I don't care about you.
Right.
I think that's critical. You read a
Yeah.
motive, you're going to get upset because you're going to take it personal.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that is so true, especially over a period of time. So, we've been talking about the mother-in-law, who comments like on parenting, for example. And, when we attribute a particular motive to that, rather than, it could be she truly desires for her grandchildren and for her, let's say it's her, her son in this instance, and even you as her daughter-in-law to live the best life possible, and she feels that she has to share this wisdom, and it's totally from a place of love and concern and caring, and she doesn't perceive that what she's doing is actually pretty insulting, in some regards. But because we've judged it that this is her intent is to demean and to make me feel, less than, we then have put ourselves in a position that is not going to, nobody wins. But I wanted to, this came to me when you're talking about expectations. And one of the best things that I've ever heard of is expectations are premeditated resentments.
Ooh, I like that. Can I steal that for the next book?
Please, please do. And because that phrase has helped me in a particular way of am I dealing with, resentment and anger? Because anger is one of my is one of my biggies. When I when I go into confession, almost invariably it'll be like, Father, been really angry. And usually it's because I had expectations that were not met by someone, and and it's something of where it's like I'm not in charge of them, I'm only in charge of me.
You draw
But
an interesting parallel.
mm,
One of the things we struggle with is when somebody in our mind offends us one too many times.
mhm,
Okay, I can forgive her, but you know what? This just keeps happening.
right.
And you said you go to confession and you confess the same sin every time.
Hmm.
How would you like Father to say, you know, Christina, I don't think you're sorry. Because if you were truly sorry, you'd stop doing this. Why do
Yep.
you continue to do this? Well,
Hmm.
Father, I'm weak. I'm a sinful person.
Hmm.
So, Christina, you expect me to forgive you every time, but your snarky mother-in-law, you're only going to forgive her about the ninth remark, and then after that, you've about had it. Okay,
Hmm.
I just want to make sure I understood that.
No, you understand completely.
That's what we do. And I talk about that. I also talk about the idea that you first meet somebody and you really enjoy them. You walk away thinking, boy, I really like that person. And you're trying to ponder what it was. A little bit later, you realize they asked all about you. They were so
Mm,
interested in who you were and what you thought about things.
mhm,
And I say that's a nice technique to use with difficult Uncle Frank. or
Mm,
with the neighbor guy whose flower beds are 10 times as nice as yours, and he's going to tell you all about it. So all you start doing is you start asking, well, how did you learn to get your flowers to grow like that? My plastic flowers die. Okay, so what is it you do? Where do you go? And you start asking about them. They
mhm,
soften. They truly do.
yeah,
They lose some of the arrogance. They lose some of the put downish. They lose some
mhm,
of the braggadocio because you're genuinely interested in them.
mhm. Yeah, I think when we make everything about ourselves, then we are losing that opportunity to be able to be enriched by those that God has put around us. I often laugh about we get the family God knows we need, not the family we want in particular. And if there's somebody that's irritating you in your family, it's potentially because God knows that this is what you need in order to grow in holiness, or at least that's where I'm coming from, so I can deal with all my difficult family members. So, but I've seen this play itself out of where we look back and we're like, wow, if I hadn't had to deal with that person and learn, hopefully we learned and to deal with that person better, then we're not prepared for the really, challenging situation that we might have. Like, you made mention of like a boss, of where we have to, because our family's livelihood depends upon it, that we have to learn how to get along. And so what's one habit like in that instance, you're in a difficult situation either with a coworker or a boss that you would suggest of not just asking about them, but what might be that next step to try and, like, for example, somebody takes credit for your work. And this seems to be a continuous situation. How is it that you are able to assert yourself, but in a way also be able to develop a better relationship with them?
Here's one of the practicalities, Christina.
Hmm.
Much of the time that we find somebody difficult, it's because of repetition. All
Hmm.
right, the person who takes credit for my work didn't do it once. That's their style. That's what
Hmm.
they do. And maybe I brought it up. Maybe I thought I was gentle, I was reasonable, and they denied it. Or they accused me of being paranoid or defensive or whatever it is.
Hmm.
Where I make my mistake is I keep thinking, I'll bring it up, bring it up, bring it up, bring it up, bring it up. That makes the relationship worse.
Hmm.
It's like the parent who watches their 23-year-old leave the faith.
Mm.
She's desperate to get him back to the faith. She
Mhm.
feels the failure of it all. So what does she do? Well, she brings it up and she gets an eye roll. She gets hostility. She doesn't read the cues because she keeps bringing it up. So
Right.
every time she does, she makes it worse. So
Hmm.
that's the first thing I say. Read the cues. Quit
Hmm.
bringing it up if every time you have, it made it worse. Well, Dr. A, what do I do then? Do I just swallow it? Well, here's the difference. You are better able to tolerate it if you don't take it personal. In other words, he takes credit for my work because he thinks he's better than me, because he thinks he's superior. No, whatever it is about him that's making him do that has nothing to do with you.
Hmm.
It's him. It's what he does. And if
Yep.
you recognize that, you don't get so upset about it. You realize that's them.
Hmm.
That isn't some kind of comment on me. He thinks I'm
Right.
inferior, so therefore he takes credit for my work. No, no, he's just a jerk.
That's awesome. Um, so, in the larger scheme of things, as we said at the beginning, you've written, over 20 books. What are your hopes, particularly for this book and its message for people?
I wanted to baby, let me rephrase this. I see so much family friction,
Mm,
so very, very much. It is said the people closest to us can hurt us the worst, whether that's a spouse, a parent, an in law. I want them to be able to get along better with them even if they don't change. That's the key.
Mhm.
I want to look at myself and say, what is it that I find that person so difficult to get along with? And I want to analyze it and then say, okay, so how does that relate to me? What am I doing to make myself so miserable about that? What am I telling myself? Am I taking it personal? Am I misreading motives? Are my expectations too high? Am I offended easily? Am I someone who demands respect and proper treatment? All of these things are very, very self-sabotaging
Mhm.
in relationships. You can't walk away from your mother for the most part. She's not shooting you with a gun. She's just a nasty person. Okay. You can't walk away from her. God didn't God didn't put an asterisk next to commandment number 4, honor thy father and mother, unless she's difficult, unless she's toxic, unless you can't set up boundaries, unless she's emotionally abusive. Oh. Now that I mentioned that, I got in trouble on the radio show once because
Mhm.
somebody called in and said, it was a husband in this case. My husband is emotionally abusive. And they've been married 20 plus years. And she's spoken to him about it a lot. And it's always a
Mhm.
source of a friction because he scolds and he gets nasty, et cetera, et cetera. I said, do you realize that you control emotional abuse? Oh, they
Mhm.
didn't like that at all. They did not like that at all. I said, well, of course you do. He can be nasty. He can be scolding. He can be put downish. He can be argumentative. He can be opinionated. He can come across like he's superior. But for that to be emotionally abusive means
Mhm.
your emotions have to allow that to happen.
Yeah.
That's huge. And I got a couple of emails saying, how dare you? I said, well,
Mhm.
no, but that's the truth. That's the
Yeah.
truth. I'm not denying that he's nasty. I'm simply saying you can ratchet up or down that degree of emotional reaction on the basis of how you interpret it.
Mhm. And I think that lesson alone is worth people going and finding your book and reading it, because that is so key for us finding peace in this world. God wants us to have that peace, but it really comes back to, as you said at the beginning, us being able to, transform ourselves with His help and grace to be able to become better people that are able to handle more difficult people, especially those closest to us.
You asked me before we started talking. You said, "What have I personally learned over these years of being a
Mhm.
psychologist or writing books?" And I think it is, I fully expect people to be human in all of our sinfulness.
Mm.
And as I expect it, I'm not as shook when they act that way.
Right.
I kind of there's a bit of a shrug to it, which is yeah, she really was nasty. Uh-huh. Okay. It wasn't she was nasty, I don't I have to decide whether I'm even going to talk to her anymore. No, that's
Mhm.
okay. She was nasty. I got it. That's what I think for me. Now, it's either that, Christina, or I'm just getting old and my testosterone's dying. That could be the other explanation.
No, I think it's being given, I talk about God's vision, being able to be given, how God looks at everyone. And it's not with rose-colored glasses that He looks at us, but He looks at us in the fullness of, as you said, our complete sinfulness and our full humanness and our tendency to be phenomenal people and horrible people all at the same time. And He loves us, and that's what He asks us to do too. uh, Before we started, you referred to our conversation before, and it really struck me about the fact of, hey, if we are Christians, we don't get a pass. We have to try. And I think that's something that really was inspiring about your book for me, was the fact of, hey, we have to try. We don't get a pass, but we have to try. And here are ways that we can do that. Um, so, uh, how do you think, that this work, this particular aspect of your work, has been helping you grow, more in holiness?
When you put your thoughts to paper, you really have to chew on them.
Mm,
And I had to look at the stuff I was writing down and saying, do I do that? Do I practice that? It's one thing to say, yeah, oh boy, he sounds really nice on paper. Sure don't want to have to live with that guy. We see that all the time because people can't understand why folks have such wonderful words, but somebody says, yeah, you don't have to live with them. And I had to make sure that if I'm going to write that stuff down, I live it.
mhm,
And I don't know if I do, but my prayer as I've gotten older has become more this one. Dear Lord, show me what I need to see about myself.
mm,
Because as a psychologist, I am acutely aware that we don't see ourselves real well. Okay. And so I need to know what is it about me that really needs to be changed to follow you better? Because I'm blind to it. I got
yeah.
the log in the eye. So
Mhm,
I can feel real comfortable thinking, well, I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, I haven't shot anybody. But there's so much of, I'll share with you something interesting. We psychologists are wascally people.
mhm,
They did a study and they used college sophomores. Now, psychologists have two subjects. They have college sophomores and rats. Okay, that's what they got. So they gave these kids this new personality test,
mm,
supposed to be the best on the books.
mhm,
Told the kids, take it, we'll come back, we'll give you the results. They came back and they said, here's your profile. Kids read their profiles and they said, we would like you to please rate how
mhm,
accurate we were in
right.
describing you. Oh, the numbers were off the charts. Oh, you hit me right on the head. Oh, it was so accurate. You suspect the trick on that one, Christina?
Oh yeah, yeah. Uh,
They gave the same description to everybody.
mhm,
That makes this point. When you say somebody's difficult, difficult is a trait word. It's very hard to pin down. What do you mean by difficult? Do they brag? Do they complain? What is it difficult? And are they only difficult with you and other people like them? Because if that's the case, you better look at yourself. So
mhm,
that word, that trait word difficult is really fuzzy and you got to
mhm.
watch using it.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think what you brought out about your, your current prayer, the prayer that has emerged for you now, show me what I need to know about myself to change so I can become a better follower of you, Lord. And I think if all of us were doing that, the world definitely would be a better place and maybe not full of so many difficult people.
Yes, very good.
Uh, just for a little bit of fun, what has been for you the most impactful? It can be any media, book, movie, TV show, that or song. What is it that's really impacted you and transformed you in a certain way along your journey?
I've probably given somewhere between 3 and 4,000 presentations to groups. And that seems to be where I am best suited. There's a lot of humor in the presentation, so I get away with saying some pretty tough stuff while people are laughing. And that's something over the years that I've learned better how to do that. So for me, probably the chief professional surge is getting in front of a group and watching them react.
Mhm. Uh, I'm telling you. You've said that you probably have a few more years on me in the sense of
You're
for
just a
experience.
pup. You're a
Yeah.
pup.
So I'm going to ask the question, if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice when you were 18, what would it have
Oh,
been?
oh. So I can't just simply say quit being a jerk? Would that be too broad?
Well, would that have spoke to you? Would that have done anything for you, for your
No.
18-year-old self? Or would you just been like, what are you talking about? I'm not a jerk.
Best piece of advice I could have given myself is to be more mature in my relationships with girls.
Mm,
When I was 18, before I met my wife, all I wanted to do was date a lot of girls, have a lot of fun. Yeah, I was still a good Catholic boy, so I didn't misuse them that way. But it was
hmm
more or less just, hey, yeah, it's nice to get to know you. Okay, bye.
hmm
That was something I regret.
Yeah. I think all of us look back at those things, and we go, ooh, ouch. But I think that's the beauty, of our continuing growth in the Lord, is that He always gives us that hope that everything will help us become exactly the type of saint that He wants in heaven. And if you hadn't had that journey, you probably wouldn't get there.
Well,
So,
I'll tell you a bigger journey.
hmm
I left the Catholic Church for 8 years,
mm,
and I was in the evangelical world, and I became very confused about what Christianity really was. And I begged the Lord, I want to believe. Please just help me believe, but I'm not quite sure what to believe. And I struggled, and I think it's safe to say the Lord knows me better than I know myself. And he knew I would dive into this reading and studying and trying to figure out answers from people much wiser than myself. And because of that, over the period of several years, I scratched and clawed my way back to the Catholic Church. And when somebody calls the radio show or the TV show, or they come to my office and they say, you know what confuses me? You know what I don't understand about God? I can say, yeah, I wrestled with that one too.
hmm
Let me give you some of the answers I came across.
hmm
Had I not gone through that crucible, I wouldn't be able to do that now.
Yep. Yep. Proof positive. Everything. God uses everything for His purposes. So I'm glad that you're allowing Him to use you for His purposes and all the good work that you're doing. Can't believe our conversation time is already up. But it has been such a joy. Any final words for people? Oh, I would be remiss if I was not to ask you, where can people find out more about the work that you do, as well as about your latest book?
My website's drray.com, drray.com. All the books are listed there. They are discounted and they are signed.
Oh, wow, that's nice. That is very nice. So drray.com. I will put that in the show notes as well. Any final pieces of advice before we sign off today?
Christina, you're a delight.
Uh, well, thank you so much. I appreciated the time with you as well. It's been a fun time for me to be host to a guest like yourself. So thank
Thanks.
you. So for everybody out there who's been listening, know my continued prayers for each and every one of you, especially that you may be able to do whatever it takes to be able to tell the master of death, not today. God bless everybody.